o'clock, so I want to call the meeting of the Silver Falls School Board to order. Welcome all our guests tonight. And we kind of have a special treat tonight. Instead of doing our normal flag salute, the high school choraliers are going to sing the national anthem and one more song after that. So everybody please stand for the national anthem. Really good to have you guys.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Very good. You guys can come back every month and do that. One more song, I think.
We're going to sing Dream Shall Break with soloist Rio Pennington, and we're also going to be singing this at our concert on October 25th, 7 o'clock in the high school auditorium. We'd love to see you guys.
Stars shining bright above you, night breezes seem to whisper, I love you.
Thank you very much, you guys. That was great. Concert October 25th, like Mrs. Kircher said. We'll give them just a second to break down. I told them there were cookies at the end if they wanted to stay. Thank you, you guys. Thank you, Mrs. Kircher. Okay, we have a few items on the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
Move for approval.
Second. Who was the second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. Student reps, Kylene and William. Oh, good to see you guys.
So I'm going to start off with the clubs again. So, FFA, the FFA went to a leadership camp the 30th to the 1st, and that was placed at Turner. They placed first in advance and second in beginnings. The soils contest was on Wednesday, October 3rd, and they placed first in advanced soil and second. Sarah Larson, Shelby Tallman, Jared Brown, Wesley Levi placed first, and beginning place Allison Clifford. They're also now starting national conventions. We also cleaned up the Silverton Road. We picked up trash the whole way down. It was really fun. NHS, National Honor Society, just selected the people that applied. They welcomed about 70 people. And last Monday, they had an introduction ceremony for all the new members. For students that shown a consistent academic standards and service to the community. And ASB, homecoming was successful. Everything was super fun, and especially for the children. We thank you, Mr. Raw, for allowing us to use this field as providing us for the trailer as a float in the parade. We had over 600 kids at the homecoming dance this year. We had put together a committee who are now preparing for the coin drive, which will be the week of November 4th through the 8th. Our next event is Rachel's Challenge. Rachel's Challenge is an anti-bullying campaign put on the parents of Rachel Scott, next victim of the Columbian High School shooting of 1999. This program was inspired to honor Rachel and her goal for compassion and kindness towards all. She felt very strongly that every person deserves to be treated well by others and lived by that principle. There are two assemblies presentation during the day as well as a community event at night. The community event is free and open for all on October 23rd at 7 o'clock. We encourage all to come and for the parents to bring their children for this presentation. Now, Key Club. Key Club is getting organized by promoting due payments to get everything prepared for tree decorating. They will have volunteers that will work for food bank. They're having a haunted house around Halloween. And the rest of the clubs are now getting organized, getting ready, and starting it up.
The conclusion of this past month marks the approximate halfway point in the fall sports season, and with perpetual success in many of the various autumn sports,
Seems like we just started.
the Foxes seem to be firing on all cylinders. The past 2 months and past 2 meets in cross country have ended well. Saturday, September 29th, athletes competed in Nike Pre-Nationals at the Portland Meadows racetrack. Freshman Maddie Furman placed 4th with a time of 20 minutes and 30 seconds in the girls' Division III varsity 5,000 meters, and junior Jonathan Sisley finished 5th in the boys' Division III varsity 5,000 meters. His time was 17 minutes 9 seconds. And this past weekend, Saturday, October 6th, the team also took part in the Mizuno Harrier Classic at Bryant Park in Albany. Jonathan Sisley finished 15th with a time of 16 minutes and 57 seconds. In boys soccer, the team seems to be having difficulty with a 1-4-1 record. This in part is due to a number of player injuries or possibly adapting to their new coach, Micah Pruss. The Fox's one win was a 3-1 contest against Santiam Christian Thursday, September 13th. And next up for the team is Corvallis at home Tuesday, October 9th. The girls soccer team continues to impress as their 6-2 record suggests. Currently they are ranked 11th in the 5A division after their 3-0 shutout over Woodburn Thursday, October 4th. And Silverton is set to face a tough opponent in Corvallis tomorrow, October 9th at Corvallis. And thus far, the girls volleyball team is having a good season. Their 4-win, 7-loss record doesn't do them justice in regards to all the hard work they've put in. In their most recent game, the team lost in a 3-2 battle with Lebanon, and as we speak, they are taking on Woodburn at Woodburn. And the biggest news at Silverton High School is their talented football team with a 6-win, no-loss record, as well as earning the #1 seed in the Oregon 5A division. There's much to talk about. The homecoming game against Corvallis surprised many with a 49-0 shutout of the Spartans Friday, September 21st. And next, in what was the most significant game of the season, Silverton upset #2 West Albany 28-21 on Friday, September 28th. This past week, Friday, October 5th, the Foxes faced 11 Warriors to win 28-6. #10 Chris Garcia rushed for 2 touchdowns. And #32 Kenneth Pike also rushed for 2 touchdowns, one being a long 79-yard sprint. At this point, I'd like to thank the student board for all their support in homecoming. It would not have been possible for the dance, the bonfire, the game, everything. And I really appreciate all you've done. And that's all for Silverton High School sports. Thank you.
Great, good report.
You mentioned the soils, the judging contest. Seems like we always do that in the mud. It's so nice and dry now.
That's interesting. I wanted to give a kudos to the leadership team and for homecoming week. Everything I went to was really well done. Participation was great. You guys did a really good job. And hats off to Silverton High School kids in general. Did a good job.
All the kids loved it for sure, to see their smiling faces.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
It's all
seems to get
matters.
better every year.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions, please? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Good report. Okay, moving on to discussion items. The first one is our notice of intent to withdraw from the Willamette ESD. Oh, sorry. We need to open it up for the first audience with visitors. Skimmed right over that. Would anybody like to address the board tonight? Nobody? Okay. Okay, so on to the notice of intent to withdraw from the WESD. This is something by state law we have to do every year. We have to decide by November 1st if we want to give intent to withdraw, and then we decide if we want to withdraw or not for sure by March 1st. So,
But this preserves our ability to do that later in the year.
yeah. I think Andy suggested that we go ahead and give our intent to withdraw just to keep our options open. Any discussion on this one, you guys? Anything else on it, Andy, or?
No, I think you've summed it up very well.
Okay.
Yeah, the second year of the statute that we're required to do this.
Yeah. Okay. Also, we don't know quite for sure what's going to happen in the legislature with the SDs this year. I've heard rumblings of maybe some reconfigurations, just some things like that with the ESD. So it might be good to keep our options open until March and see what happens. So. Okay. In our packet, we had our 2012-13 board and budget activities calendar. And this is just kind of for informational purposes, most of all. Any discussion on this? One thing I wanted to point out is on March 21st is the deadline to file for elections, and we have 3 board positions coming up. I think Wally, Irv, and myself, I think our terms are coming up. So keep that date in mind and decide whether you want to run again. And also, if we decide to go out for a bond, that's the deadline to have a resolution for that and file for that. So that's one day we kind of need to keep in mind. Okay, our community telephone survey is finished. Melissa Martin is here from the Nelson Group, and she's going to give us a report. Melissa, thank you for coming.
Thanks, everyone. One of the pieces that you did not get, that was not included in your packet that I gave to Denise prior to the meeting, it looks like this. It is your demographic profile for the district. It's not very exciting reading, but I think it's important for you to have some kind of idea about what your community looks like. The very top box on the first page shows you how many individuals live within your school district, the number of males, number of females, and then your age category breakouts. The survey that we conducted was conducted of 1 of 4 voters and above. So the people that we talked to, we didn't talk to any non-voters. One of the pieces that I wanted you to pay particularly close attention to on page 2 on the top box, these are your perfect voters. These are your 4 out of 4 voters. And 93% of your 4 of 4 voters are over the age of 45, which basically is telling you that most of your perfect voters do not have kids in school. So as we move forward and I start making observations about the survey research results, keep in mind that the people that we are talking to are older folks. In your 3 of 4 category, which are also very frequent voters, 86% of them were over the age of 45. So that's, there's additional information if you want to take a look at it, but I thought it might be interesting for you to have a copy of your specific school district profile.
Wow, so if you're over 45, you're an older folk now?
I guess so.
Oh, boy.
Well, I just had a kid. I'm 44 and my child just graduated high school, so I don't have kids in school anymore either.
Some of us are well over 45 and still have kids in school, just for informational purposes.
All right, now for the exciting part. We interviewed a total of 370 respondents between September 21st and September 26th of this year. The margin of error for this survey is a plus or minus 5% at the 95% level of confidence, which means if we were to conduct the same survey 100 times, we would be within a plus or minus 5% margin of error 95 out of 100 times. We began the survey by asking respondents what 2 or 3 of the most serious problems facing the district were. Lack of funding came in number 1. 28% of respondents cited lack of funding as the most serious problem. Schools in disrepair or aren't maintained, 14% of respondents said that, and these are unaided. This is an unaided, open-ended question. Overcrowded classes, 13% of respondents, and Eugene Field School is in poor shape, 7% of respondents. We then came in and asked respondents, this is on page 3, to rate the operation and performance of the Silver Falls School District. 68% of respondents gave the district a positive performance rating. 17% rated the district excellent, pretty good, 51%. 14% rated the district negatively, 11% said only fair, and 3% poor, and 18% were not sure. These results remain consistent with results from 2000. We conducted a survey for you in 2000, and on the following page, you can see a comparison of your survey research results over the years. Primary reasons for an excellent rating, again, this was only 17% of all respondents. Personal experience. Students are getting a good education and great teachers. Primary reasons for a pretty good rating, which was 51% of all respondents. Personal experience, room for improvement, and from what I've heard read. Main reasons for an only fair rating, which was 11% of all respondents. Mismanaged money, and students don't get a good education. Now remember, this 21% and the 10% are it's 21% of 11%, so these are pretty small percentages. Foremost reason for a poor rating was old, poorly maintained buildings. Next, we asked respondents to rate the physical condition of the Schlater Street campus. 42% of respondents were not sure how to rate this particular school. I think that's something of note and that the school board needs to be aware of, that people do not seem to have an understanding about what the physical condition of this district, of this particular school building is. 40% who did know how to rate the district or how to rate this building rated it negatively, which is, of the balance of people, 40% is pretty high. 22% rated it only fair and 18% poor. 1% rated the building excellent and 17% pretty good. Top reasons for an only fair rating of the Schlater Street campus is really old building. 53% of the responses we got for an only fair rating was really old building. It needs maintenance and in poor condition. Principal reasons for a poor rating: it's an old building, it needs maintenance, and unsafe. Reasons for rating the building excellent. Now, this is only 1% of all respondents, so I think there's like 2 people who gave these responses. Sturdy building, it's brand new, looks good, no cracks, and they get money for maintenance. Foremost reasons for a pretty good rating, which was 17% of all respondents: it looks okay, the building is usable, and seems to be in good condition.
Melissa, what did you say there were? That was only like 2 people who answered?
Yeah, 1% of all respondents, so
Okay,
it's a very,
okay.
very low percentage. And so you see 20% all along, so it's about 2 people who gave
Okay.
these responses.
So it is the brand new response. May have been a mix up with the new high school.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
Next, we asked respondents to rate the physical condition of Eugene Field Elementary School. 61% of respondents rated this building negatively. I drove past it on my way. It's on the main drag, so I'm assuming that a lot of people, it has a lot of traffic, so people see it quite often. 18% rated the building only fair, and 43% rated this building poor, which is a fairly high poor rating. Usually you'll see a higher only fair rating, so it's notable that 43% rated this building poorly. 13% rated this building positively, 2% gave an excellent rating, and 11% gave a pretty good rating. Main reasons for rating the building only fair, which was only 18% of respondents: older building and needs updating. Foremost reasons for a poor rating, which was 43%, old building, outdated, and unsafe. Reasons for an excellent rating: looks good, well maintained. 2% of respondents gave an excellent rating. 11% who gave a pretty good rating: looks good, needs maintenance, well maintained. Next, we asked respondents to rate the spending, whether they believe the district spends the money it receives wisely. 42% believe the district spends the money it receives wisely, and 31% did not. 27% were not sure. It's not unusual. 27% isn't particularly high. These aren't surprising results in comparison to other districts that we've done these kinds of questions with. We only asked those who did not believe the district spends money wisely. Why? Need to budget better. This was 31% of all respondents said they did not believe the district spent wisely. Need to budget better. Didn't need a new high school. Too many administrators, and no district spends wisely. Moving on to page 11, we came in and asked respondents an unbiased who's ahead, which basically outlined the total cost of the bond measure, and then gave some specific information about the projects that would be included in the measure. With this unbiased who's ahead question, slightly less than half of respondents, 48%, favored a $33 million bond measure, while 33% opposed, 19% were not sure. Primary reasons for favoring the measure: again, 48% of respondents favored. Maintenance and upgrades are needed, provides good education for students, as long as taxes don't go up, and always support schools. Stop reasons for opposing the bond measure, which was it's not 48%, it's 33% of all respondents. It's not needed, mismanaged money, taxes are too high now, and too much money. We then came in and asked respondents, we gave them one piece of information and asked with that piece of information whether they would favor or oppose the proposal. What this is designed to do is to find out how respondents, if there are any pieces of information that move respondents either in favor of a measure or in opposition of a measure. And you will see here that we have all the arguments in descending order. Again, the initial who's ahead question, 48% of respondents initially favored the measure, 33% opposed, 19% were not sure. Knowing that the bond measure would protect the community's investment in school buildings by replacing worn-out roofs, etc., 68%, that moved from 48 to 68%, which was a plus 20% gain. Most people, especially those of us who have owned a home, understand that things wear out. And we understand that it's important to protect our investment. And this was a message, we see it universally across the state. And it's a message that most people can relate to because they understand that things wear out. Knowing that making energy improvements would save the district tens of thousands of dollars in annual operating costs, went from 48% who favored to 67%, which is a plus 19% gain. This is a very, very strong message. Knowing the bond measure includes technology infrastructure upgrades to enable all students to have equal access to modern technology at all of the district schools, another 19% gain. So again, support jumped to 67% with this argument. Knowing that due to low interest rates, the district would be able to finance its school construction projects at a much lower cost, a 17% gain. Support jumped from 48% to 65%. Moving on to page 15, toward the bottom of the page, information that the bond measure includes plans to close Eugene Field Elementary School. There is a negative 3% with this information, so it went from 48% to 45%. Knowing a $33 million bond measure would include reconstructing portions of the Schlater Street campus, 45% favored with that piece of information, which was a negative 3%. Knowing that Eugene school students would be moved out of the existing building, again, a minus 3%, 45% of respondents are favored with this piece of information. And decreasing support for the bond measure by the largest measure, which was a minus 10%, was information that the bond measure would include tearing down the two oldest 2- and 3-story portions of the Schlater Street campus. I have these key observations. All of these demographics listed, I'm not going to go through them all obviously, but all of these demographics are key demographics. Those that respond or in bold are those respondents who respond consistently with each argument. So that is something you're going to want to be taking a look at in conjunction with possibly this piece of information, so you can kind of see how people are responding in the community to each of these arguments. Next, we came in and asked respondents to rate individual construction projects. I'm on the upper part of page 18. Building repairs and renovations, such as new roofs, electrical, heating, plumbing, 72% of people gave that a high priority. It again reflects the high number of people who believe that protecting the community's investment is important. So these kinds of repairs and maintenance, people are very supportive of. Technology infrastructure upgrades, 68% gave that a high priority. Close Eugene Field School, 56% of respondents gave that a high priority. So there's quite a jump or quite a drop between the technology and Eugene Field. And then demolish the 2- and 3-story portions of the Schlater Street campus and build a new middle school building. The one thing, I would like to reference here is if you go back and you look at the number of people who were not sure how to rate this building, 40% or 42% of people were unsure how to rate this building. 40% gave this building a negative rating, and 41% see it as a high priority. So once people understand what the issues are with the building, they seem to be more favorable to tearing the building down or tearing down portions of the building. Another piece of information I think is important as well is it seemed in the arguments that preserving the gym and the sports complex jumped support from, I think it was 45% the initial response to the Schlater Street campus renovations, but when you talked about preserving the gym and the sports complex, support jumped to 55%. So those are all pieces of information that you need to be aware of. Next, we came in and asked purposely prejudicial or gave purposely prejudicial statements. Many of them reflected some of the if you knew statements. People may favor or oppose a measure if they know something to be true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they believe it to be true. So when we come in and ask an agree-disagree question, we're basically asking them if they believe this piece of information to be true. So what we're looking at here is to see whether there's good correspondence between the if you knew question and then the agree-disagree question. So on the top of page 20, measure will protect the community's investment in buildings. If you knew the proposed bond measure would protect the community's investment in school buildings, 68% of respondents favored with that piece of information. The agree-disagree statement, we need to protect the community's investment in our school buildings by making necessary renovations and improvements. 62% of respondents agreed with that statement. Good correspondence, very, very good, strong message. Energy improvements will provide significant savings in operating costs. 67% of respondents favored with that piece of information. If making energy improvements at the district's school buildings will save the district tens of thousands of dollars per year in operating costs, I'd support the proposed $33 million bond measure. 61% of respondents agreed. Again, 67 to 61, there's pretty good correspondence there. Eugene Field School closed and sold. Seems that the piece of information here that Eugene Field School would be sold and the proceeds used to offset the cost of the measure, 64% of respondents favor with that piece of information. As long as the proceeds used in the sale of Eugene Field School are used to offset the cost of the bond measure, I'll support. 61% agreed. Again, good correspondence. It's important to folks that you use the money or proceeds to sell this school, if you do decide to sell it, to offset the cost of the bond. Cost of the bond measure to property taxpayers. Knowing the $33 million bond measure would not increase existing school property taxes, 62% favored with this piece of information. If you knew your school district property tax rate could be less than what you are currently paying in property taxes because of another expiring bond, 61% of respondents favored with that piece of information. As long as the proposed bond measure isn't projected to increase my current property tax rate, I'll support. 61% agreed with that statement. So very, very good, strong correspondence. In today's economy, I just can't afford to pay for a school district bond measure, even if it doesn't increase or reduce what I'm currently paying in school district property taxes. I'm voting no. 55% of respondents disagreed with that statement. Basically what that's telling me is people are overall supportive, but there may be a little bit of, are they really not going to raise my taxes? The current state of the economy, I wouldn't get too hung up on that, but it's something to be noted. Eugene Field Elementary School would be closed. If you knew Eugene Field Elementary School is 90 years old and has surpassed its useful life, 60% of respondents favored with this piece of information. If you knew a proposed bond measure includes plans to close Eugene Field Elementary School, 45% favor with this information. If you knew Eugene Field School students would be moved out of the existing building and into either Robert Frost or Mark Twain, 45% favor with this information. Eugene Field Elementary School is old and outdated. I support closing this school and moving students to the other elementary schools in town. 62% agree with this statement. So there's some sentimental, what I'm getting from this is there may be some sentimental attachment to Eugene Field School, either that or it's the odd idea of moving students into another school. I can't quite put my finger on exactly what it is because you've got your same numbers, whether it talks about closing the school or moving students into a different school. There's just a little bit of angst or discomfort.
It looks like they contradict. Those two things are contradicting each other.
They understand that it's
They're the same
old.
thing.
Well, they understand it's over 90 years old. They understand in the rating question that it is old. They don't perceive the building positively. So I'm not quite sure what's happening here, but there's something going on with Eugene Field that I can't quite put my finger on.
I see something similar as you get further into Bush Slater Street as well. It's a similar type of thing.
Right. Except, yeah, you're correct. The one thing that we'll get to that when we get to that point. Technology upgrades, pretty good correspondence there. To me, what I'm seeing as the main selling point of this technology upgrade is equal access to modern technology, as opposed to just the technology piece. It'll be important to talk about equal access at all the district schools. Low interest rates. It did pretty well in the If You Knew series. It was a little bit flatter in the agree-disagree. I think if you can tie it back to tax rates and how really overall it will reduce tax rates. If you wait, tax rates will be higher than if you were to actually do the construction now while interest rates are low.
We'll need more money to do the same amount of work.
Exactly.
Wait,
Schlater Street campus. If you knew the sports complex, gymnasiums, and single-story classrooms would be preserved, 55% of respondents favored. I know I touched upon that a little bit earlier. If you knew due to the age and condition, it would be more cost-effective to construct a new building than remodel, 50% favored with that piece of information. You'll see the very last If You Knew that talks about tearing down the oldest 2- and 3-story portion of the Schlater Street campus. At the very back of this document is a copy of the questionnaire and the order in which the questions were asked. And we did ask this question about tearing down this parts of this building early. So we asked this question prior to telling them that there would be portions of the building preserved. So I think that that's part of the disconnect that you see there. Does that make sense? Now here's the piece that, again, I think that gives you, I think if there's some understanding about what the issues are with the Schlater Street campus, along with preserving portions of the building. I don't want any portion of the Schlater Street campus torn down and replaced with a new middle school building. If the district should just renovate the existing 2- and 3-story buildings, even if it's more expensive than new construction. 57% of the respondents disagree with that statement. So there's a need to really educate people about what's going on in that school, as well as reassuring folks that do have sentimental attachment to that school that there are pieces of that may be preserved. The next series is basically the agree-disagree statements in descending order. I don't think it's necessary to go through each and every one of them. I pretty much have outlined most of the executive summary. I think that the main things that I want to really stress here, basically the main issues or the main pieces that seem to solicit the most support: protecting the community's investment in school buildings, a significant cost savings in energy and annual operating costs, equal technology for improved student learning, low interest rates, if you kind of tie it back to saving taxpayers money and being a good steward of their funds. I think that the community clearly understands that their lack of funding is a serious problem for the district. While slightly less than half of respondents initially favor a bond measure, support significantly increases when presented with information the measure would protect the community's investment in school buildings, provide a significant cost savings in operating costs at all of by making energy upgrades at all of the schools. In addition, respondents also react positively to information the measure includes technology upgrades for student learning and would provide equal access to modern technology throughout the district. Furthermore, information that the district can take advantage of the current low interest rates, which would ultimately save property taxpayers money, also solicits strong support. On the negative side, respondents appear to be less supportive of tearing down and rebuilding portions of the Schlater Street campus. While this information decreased support and did not receive a high priority rating, a majority of respondents disagreed with the statement about not wanting any portion of the school torn down. This may reflect a lack of understanding regarding the serious issues facing this school building. While information that Eugene Field Elementary School will be closed and students moved into other elementary schools in the district slightly decreases support for the $33 million bond measure, respondents appear to understand there are serious issues with the building as reflected in the various closed-ended and open-ended responses. Again, I think that using the proceeds to offset the cost is also a positive for the Eugene Field portion of construction project. If the district decides to move forward with the proposal, it will be very important to reassure respondents that passage of the measure will not increase current property tax rates and provide a significant cost savings in energy and maintenance costs. It will also be important to provide additional information about the serious problems facing the Schlater Street campus. This proposal could be successful with messages woven into a clear and concise strategy. And finally, there appears to be a concern by some respondents regarding fiscal accountability that the district should continue to address. It's not unusual. I think that a lot of folks, districts don't necessarily talk about how they spend money, and I think that it just reflects a lack of understanding, that's all. So, now that I've filled your brain with a lot of data and numbers, do you have any questions?
I was wondering, if, based on what you have here, and you do this all the time, more of a subjective level, what's some key takeaways?
I think some key takeaways is I don't think it's a shoo-in by any stretch. I don't think that, there's only 48% initially favor the proposal, which is not a super high number. You do have some messages that move people in the right direction. However, there's cause for concern. And I think that, you need to embark on some communication with the community about what's going on with some of these school buildings. And, if there are issues in Eugene Field and in the Schlater Street campus that people don't understand, you think it's important that they do, I think that you need to start addressing folks in retirement homes and other places where senior centers, and talking to folks about what's really going on in the district, because they don't know.
Have you, in other surveys you've done, have you seen that kind of contradictory thing that we were talking about with Eugene Field and Schlater?
Yeah, many times it's either a lack of understanding, they don't know how to rate the district or rate the condition of the building, they're not aware of what the conditions are in the building, and other times it's been related to sentimental attachment. I think that the main thing with the Schlater Street campus is preserving the areas that we talked about preserving. That seemed to really bring people around. And toward the end of the survey, when we gave them the statement, I don't want, that was really, really testing sentimental attachment to that building. 57% of people disagreed with that statement. So once they understand and they feel comfortable that portions of that building won't be torn down, I think that they're more comfortable with that project. I'm a little bit more concerned about Eugene Field.
I'm wondering if part of it might be, since you asked the question originally about Schlater, about tearing down towards the beginning of the survey, if people were thinking, well, no, they could remodel that, or they could, put some paint on there. But then when you said if it was more economical to do that, the support went up.
Yeah, it went to 50%. And I believe that we asked the tearing down portions was very early, and then directly after that we asked the question about preserving the sports complex and gymnasium, and that jumped from 38 to 55, I believe.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Yeah, I go through the data pretty, that's why I know the numbers. It's kind of scary, actually.
Well, our sports programs go down, to the grade school, and they all use the sports complexes, so there's a lot of support in that.
It looks like the older you are, the more likely you are to vote.
Exactly.
And then the older you are, the more likely you are also to think the buildings are okay.
Right.
So it's a bad kind of...
Well, you don't have kids in school, you're not in the building, you don't see what's happening. And if there's not a certain level of communication with those folks in the community on a regular basis, then they don't have any understanding about what's going on. Yeah. So I can't stress enough to school boards. It's universal, it's not special to your district, but it's something that all districts need to be aware of.
It's good enough for me and my kids. So.
Yeah. Well, there may be a generational difference too in terms of standards of what we think is acceptable because of our own experiences too. So how does our district compare to other districts in general, just the general mood in the community and favoring how good a job our district's doing?
I think that you do fairly well as far as your the overall rating, operation and performance rating of the district. It's not I've seen some in the mid to high 70s. It's not super common. You guys are fairly high. There's the general mood in Oregon with any public entity is a little bit less trusting, or they don't have as high or a positive response to public entities as they have in the past, and I think that's just a direct correlation to what's happening in the economy. I think that it's important for you all to talk about how you're spending money, what kinds of cost savings programs you have in place. Get your kids out there in the community talking to folks, and interacting with people, so that they know, what good work you're doing.
Well, when I look at the table there on page 3 that talks about people's view of the most serious problems, I mean, you can really, if you want to just chalk it up to not having enough money to have adequate class sizes and to have modern, adequate buildings, all those things can be kind of chalked up to
Lack of funding.
lack of funding.
Exactly. And lack of funding was a top response, and then most of the things that came beneath that were all issues related to a lack of funding. So it's sort of a catch-22. It's just, people don't have a lot of money, and people that are hired on a fixed income. So it'll be very important to reassure folks if they're comfortable with what they're paying, then, they're going to feel comfortable with the bond. If there's any kind of doubt about whether or not taxes are going to be increased, I think that you're going to have a different kind of battle on your hands.
Other questions for Melissa?
This is going to be very helpful. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, I'm available. Feel free. Andy has my number, and you can call me for anything. I'm more than happy to help any way I can.
Yeah, this was really well done. Thank you very much. Thank you. This information's going to come in well done.
Great.
Thank you, Melissa. Any other discussion on this while we're on this topic about bond measure or some of the other things we've talked about? I know one thing Andy mentioned in our packet is that if we wanted to try for a bond measure in May, we have to decide fairly soon. So we need to be thinking about which way we want to go with some of this stuff, digesting some of this information.
I agree with that.
I thought it was interesting to see the support for upgrades at schools and maintenance and taking care of some of that stuff. That shows me that people like their schools, like the outlying schools, and people like things the way they are. And,
well, they understand they need to be maintained so they last. I think out of anything, clearly we should at least go down that avenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or have an opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
The few discussions I've had with people, they seem to be reassured knowing that the taxes aren't going to go higher. Mm-hmm. Knowing that one pays off and this one would come in to meet that level, they seem much more comfortable with that. Because everyone assumes that they're going to be paying more, and this is the same.
Anytime a bond measure, people think they're going to pay more.
Right.
Have we done any study, or we made this question that had the assumption that we could do energy improvements that would significantly reduce our energy costs and maintenance costs, things like that. Do we have any kind of estimates put together on what kind of projects would be included and what kind of savings we might actually get? Because that seems to be a significant.
It may not be an exhaustive list, Owen, but we do have a study that was completed. It's actually been updated, completed initially about 5, maybe even 7 years ago, that was based upon the energy efficiency outcome of use of Senate Bill 1149 dollars, which is regulated by the state of Oregon, and those dollars are public purpose dollars which come from each of us as we pay our PGE bill or whatever utility we pay into. And so we're required to determine what those efficiencies are. And so the focus of the $1149 has been nearly exclusive to energy efficiency projects, like the outcome of replacing windows or an updated furnace or whatever it may be. It wouldn't count things like replacement of a roof or adding some new color to a building or things of that sort, which would be more cosmetic upgrades or maintenance requirements. So I think the answer is yes, but it's not exhaustive and comprehensive.
It would be interesting even to do some more on that, because it does seem to be such a significant issue. And I mean, talk about like changing a roof. The difference between a black roof and from a light charcoal roof can be 30 degrees in an attic.
Sure.
I mean, even things like that don't seem like they would have an energy component can sometimes.
We have a lot of aging roofs out there. That's one thing that scares me to death in this district. Our contingency keeps dropping and dropping and dropping, and we have a lot of suspect roofs out there.
Yeah, it's starting to go very small. And we need all our buildings. We've seen from our enrollment figures that came out in October that, we don't have a lot of extra room. We need our buildings. So. Interesting. So any other discussion on this one? We'll hit this again at our work session at the end of the month, because I do think we need to decide what we want to do as far as the bond maybe by November probably if we decide to go in May. There's also the option for November. Okay. Okay. Any other items for discussion tonight? Nothing? Okay. Administrator and staff reports. Andy.
Each one of you has a copy of the October 1 enrollment numbers, and even though you saw the first week enrollment numbers just a few weeks ago, the October 1 enrollment numbers are used to, for budgeting purposes, they're also used to help determine free and reduced percentage levels of our schools in the district and other purposes. So there, in my mind, is not a huge change, but it does drill down a little bit deeper into some differences from year to year. I want to highlight a couple of marks. First of all, the enrollment increase seems to be sustaining. We've got about a 41 student increase at the elementary level and a 59 student increase at the high school level, so that's just under 100, which is something this district hasn't seen in a little while. I'd like to think that'll sustain throughout the year, but if the first month is any indicator, that's a reasonable sign, and it's a good sign because it's always, from a funding standpoint, good to have an increasing enrollment. So let's hope that keeps up. The others to point out is, and some of these we've discussed in the past, we've had two attendance areas which have seen really quite a significant increase of attendance area growth, and that's Central Howell and Victor Point. Victor Point is at 199 here, but it was above 200. Central Howell is shown at 186, and that was on October 1st, but I believe they're up to 189 right now, just within the first week of October. Butte Creek and Scotts Mills schools on the north side of the school district are dropping, at least with this year as a comparison. The concern there, and again we've addressed this a little bit in the past, and that is especially at Scotts Mills, the peaks and valleys that they're experiencing out there from literally just before we closed Monitor School a couple of years ago, their enrollment at 110 to it spiking in the mid-160s last year, and now it was 155 on October 1st last year, but now down to 130. So in my mind, it's still a little premature to determine what that pattern is and where that enrollment is going to land. But I think if this time next year we're talking about Scotts Mills being at 120, 115 students, I think we've got an area of concern that we'll need to discuss and we'll need to address in some capacity. It's my hope that we'll be able to maintain the 130 to maybe 150 capacity at Scotts Mills in kind of a natural fashion, but I can't tell you whether that's going to occur or not. So the numbers really have to speak for themselves, but I do believe it's a little bit premature to make any clear distinction about Scotts Mills just yet. I think a year from now we'll be in a better position to do that. Other than that, that's the general feel of the enrollment. I can address any questions if you have any. I do think it's also important to point out, and again, this is a decision made based upon the capacity as determined by current staffing levels, but we've got more schools in the district this year that are turning away transfers than we've had in the past, and that includes Eugene Field, Robert Frost, and Mark Twain schools, which we haven't seen. I don't know that we've seen ever in those buildings, and they're full. Even though not to physical capacity, they're full to staffing capacity.
Are we getting transfer requests for those schools from out of district or in district transfers?
Both.
Both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you have anything on PERS rates, Andy?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Thank you to Jan for putting together some summary information. And keep in mind, before I share this information with you, that there are so many unknowns when it comes to determine what the actual costs of the staffing level will be. PERS is one of them, but when Jan put these figures together, she made some assumptions based upon current staffings and really based upon no change in any adjustments, because we're still preliminary to bargaining. We don't know what the outcome to bargaining is going to be, so there are clearly implications. But assuming status quo and assuming no change, the PERS rates for the district will increase, and I have two figures to share with you. One of them is for the Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees, and it will increase by 6.5%, and for our OBSERT employees will increase by 6%. So relatively similar increase. But the number that's most significant for you to know is, depending upon the variables that Jan uses, the increased cost for the 13-14 fiscal year will be anywhere from about $970,000 up to $1.7 million increased costs in PERS increase alone, increase for the next fiscal year.
That's painful.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty significant. It's nearly as significant as we experienced 2 years ago.
Except our budgets are in worse shape than they were 2 years ago.
Right. Now, of course, we have to say, well, what's going to happen? And we've got a legislature that's convening in January and all these variables. But I think if you take a look at the history of where we are, where we've been, and the anticipated impact that PERS will have, we're by no means out of the woods. And you could very well find yourself in a position of a budget reduction next fiscal year.
Well, the economy, at least from my viewpoint, appears to be petering out a little bit. It was going up and level, not going back down again. So it's not good news for our revenue stream.
It's not. And the state economist would agree with that statement, Wally. Last spring, the state economist was anticipating a 13% increase in the 13 to 15 biennium, and the most recent estimate, which came out in September, dropped that figure to 11%. It's an election year. There's a fairly amount of uncertainty going on both at the state and the federal level, and again, not knowing what the legislature is going to do, and what the makeup of that legislature is going to be as well, is also brings some uncertainty. So I think we have to hang on for the ride. The PERS rates are relatively certain, though. They are projections by the board, but the projections are accurate.
And the 970,000 to 1.7 million range, when do we know, Jan, when do we know or more exact figure on that? That'll be way down the road, won't it?
Well, we know what the PERS board has done as far as our rates. So the estimates are based on what our wages are going to do, what you bargain, what money you're going to have as far as you're going to be able to staff.
Okay.
So basically, how many employees we have.
Okay. Wow, that's sobering news. Maybe something to talk to our legislatures about, that something needs to be done about this, because we thought it was out of hand before. Crazy. Okay. Questions for Andy? Okay, Jan, financial report?
You should have received the report in the mail. I wanted to just mention that did receive the preliminary audit report for review and did some corrections and sent it back for them to do the final report, and we hopefully should have it for your work session this month.
Oh, terrific.
Okay.
Are there any questions on the financial report?
Okay, seeing none. Kathy Frank, Bethany Charter School. Annual report.
I humbly come here tonight with a re-invitation on a calmer note. You should have received my report in your board packet. If you have any questions, I'll welcome those questions. Otherwise, I put everything into my board packet because Andy was looking out for me this year. And he said, Kat, let's do something important and get it done right away. And I'm not going to bother you with your time. I just want to say it's here. And Bethany is an entity that Silverton, we promote choice. And when kids come to Silverton, and they don't have a second choice, they come to Bethany, and we try our darndest to meet that choice. And we are just here doing what we can do. So I heard color choice. Color sometimes, man, means something, in your maintenance report. But I welcome any questions you have for me, and I'll shut up, basically. Please, right?
Well, school looks great.
Yeah, it does.
Kids this summer,
It does. Looks
it
really
really looks
good.
nice.
Yeah, guys, I have to tell you, it's a wonderful place. Yeah, we try our best, and we just keep on putting forth, and those kids are outstanding. We get jumpers here, there, that, there, but it really matters that Bethany is here in Silverton, and we thank you. We thank you for allowing us to be chartered.
Looking at your test scores here, I didn't dig back and look at what the trend has been, but it seems to me these are improved from the last scores we've seen. Is that true?
We have. We've hit some bumps and crannies because being Bethany, kids come for 1 year and then, they hit up with the middle school friends. We don't want to be there now because middle school's cooler. If you're at Mark Twain, you have the town. So it's really hard to track compared to Victor Point. Well, not now because I'm hearing different numbers, but since, never mind. But track the core group.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's cool now about the reports that you can print out, and I'm looking forward to being able to print out the core group that has been with us.
Stayed with you.
Yes, and so it looks different, but we are getting our act together accordingly. We're not going to promise it next year.
Why not?
Why's that?
You just don't know. You just don't know. I mean, we'd love to say, but, it's just with the core standards coming into place,
Yeah.
and we're really hitting those hard, trying to be ahead of the game in our own way, because never mind. Tip the glasses, Denise, and say, but, serious, I welcome questions. I apologize for any unfulfillment report here, but this is good stuff, right, Andy?
You did well.
Yes.
No, thank you for providing
Thank
that
you.
extra information especially.
Yes.
Kathy?
Question?
Yeah. On the first page, the bottom bullet, you said Bethany implemented the adopted 8th grade graduation promotion standards. What are those, or what does that mean?
We found kids to transfer in and out from 7th, 8th grade. So we thought, okay, what can we do about that to make it a steady standard for Bethany? So we went ahead, we looked at our core standards, which are, you walk into Bethany and we want you to see traditional agriculture. So we implemented all the standards that a 7th, 8th grader in Silverton or where have you would need to succeed at the high school. We really focus on these kids going to Silverton High because if they're from Jervis, Woodburn, they want to go with their core group to Silverton. So we looked at that and implemented 8, like the Constitution. So often we just blow that off. So that's one of the standards. They have to pass a constitutional test that just brings back the meat and bones of standards. So we looked at those, implemented those. We had 1 or 2 students struggle with it, put into place a little contract for them, get them on board. It's pretty much, you graduate from 8th grade. That's not the question. But do you walk from 8th grade at the ceremony? So we implemented strategies to get them to want to walk and be a part of the celebration.
That's great.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
that's basically
Yeah.
it.
And what you mentioned Jervis and Woodburn. Do you know off the top of your head, the percentage of kids from our district or that come from out of district? Roughly.
Yes, that ranges on a 2 to 3 year cycle, but currently I think we're at probably 60% Silverton.
Okay.
60%.
For the balance coming from,
North Salem, We have Santiam Canyon.
Wow.
That's just Mount Angel, just the local areas
In
that,
Jervis.
yes, yes.
Yeah, I see you have about 138 students right now. What's your class configurations look like, as far as class sizes and teacher-student ratio? And
You know, it's capped. The building will not hold any more than
Wow,
136.
that's a lot of kids for that building.
Yeah, it will not hold, but we have, so you go 15 kindergartner, 30, 30, 30, 30. That's the capacity of the building. So
Okay.
we have one extra kindergartner currently who's going to move to Colorado, and then we'll be at the basis of what we need.
Mhm.
But we have a 5-hour instructional assistant in each classroom. Parent volunteer is strong. We have grandparents helping out, teaching art, coming in, just enjoying the kids, what have you. Not the best picture.
So, but each classroom has a classroom teacher, has a educational assistant, and a parent.
Educational assistant for 5 hours, and then we really push volunteerism.
All right.
So if they need someone to come in, you can enter that gym and have breakouts. You've got parents pulling, just read. Not the best picture, by no means. I would not push 30 on a classroom, but to keep that building, keep the charter alive.
Understand.
30's
For revenue purposes.
Yes. So that's, my name's out there being, she'll take one more. You know what? I have to take one more to pay those bills. Right, Ken? Don't go there. But, you know, you really have to, like we hear. Okay? Irving Stadley did our concrete this year. Got to meet him, talk on a personal level. Good guy. I really appreciate your honesty on the project and everything. I mean, really, local is the way, and so it worked out really well.
Good.
Okay,
Other questions for Kathy? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
keep doing it. Thank you.
Dustin, Central Howell and Title I program.
Gary's gonna we'll give you the tag team on technology.
Oh, good, okay.
Thanks, Gary. So I'm here to talk about Central Howell Title Programs in Technology, and we'll start off with technology. First, our technology committee is in the process of developing a policy to deal with students using district-owned technology, but more or less when they check it out and take it home, which is a new thing that we've dabbled in from school to school, but it's going to be a big deal as more and more mobile devices get in the students' hands, whether it's laptops or PCs or iPads or it's just plain old smartphones. We're going to need a policy to have to deal with that, or iPods, I should say, not smartphones from the district. Another task to accomplish is updating our technology plan, which that will help us out in several different ways. We haven't looked at that. We haven't made it current in a couple of years, and we need to do that because a lot of things have changed in a couple of years. Gary and I have 2 technology meetings a month, one with Mr. Hannon from the high school because his school has most of the technology in the district, so we try to have that meeting first, and then 2 days later we have a district technology committee meeting where we talk about all kinds of issues dealing with technology across the school district, getting input. Each school is invited to send a member from their school. Most schools can send a member, some can't, but we try to keep everybody informed. The person with the telephone pole was talking about the equal access, and so if we're fortunate enough to have a bond measure pass and it includes the technology piece, the equal access issue with increased bandwidth for everybody, wireless access points, what will we need to have in the near future and down the line to accommodate all these wireless mobile devices, using Google Drive, which is what we're currently promoting now at the middle school and high school level, or will it be something like Office 365 or something we can't even think of right now? what we'll be using. And the whole issue around having all those mobile devices is productivity. So you got this cool iPad, you got this cool PC tablet, but can you be productive with it? You know, what are its limitations? I know that I own an iPad, and there are productivity limitations with it. So you got to, hopefully there will be apps down the line that will address all of that, but there are going to be limitations until some company gets everything in place.
One of the things that we are mostly concerned about is the infrastructure to support all these wireless devices that are coming our way. Right now we only have 40, I think it's around 40 iPads in the district. And I think Bethany has like 33 Kindles. But they are fantastic tools. Once teachers get a hold of them and they start using them and kids get them in their hands, it's pretty amazing. So I just want to be involved in this bond measure because this really is going to affect technology. So I want to encourage the school board here to take advantage of these kudos to these kids that do video stuff. We have hardly tapped into that at all. We can tap into that for getting out there, getting the message out there. Why do they not know what's going on in Eugene Field? Maybe they don't see it. Maybe we could do some video stuff where we can go in there and show them and do some stuff. You know, it's like a presidential election. You get the videos out there, it can change people's minds. So it's not like we're going to put our thing on, you know, NBC or anything. But scan TV, we can do that, and on the internet. So it's only 2 minutes. But I do want to give kudos to these kids. I don't know how well you know what these kids can do. Last homecoming Friday night, I went home. Wow. Oh, that's pretty nice. I went home and the whole crew ran the whole thing with announcers and cameras and setting it up and doing all the technical stuff and overseeing it and putting it away, the whole thing. I think that's pretty amazing. Like back there, I don't do any of that. They do it. So we have potential and we can do that. So I just want to encourage the board to think about the resources you have in technology.
And our schools are always asked to do more with less because of these difficult budget times, but our technology department has come through with flying colors. Every year their budget is reduced, and every year they maintain the same level of quality service, getting out to our schools, fixing things quickly, putting together all these video programs, hardware repair programs, and so they're doing excellent work despite the tough times as well.
We mentioned to Andy last budget when we talked about that, I said, is it okay to go outside the box and get funds? And of course Andy said, you know, I don't know what that means, but one of the things we're doing at the high school is we're asking all the districts to give us their old junky computers. I don't know if you knew what we're doing over there, but we're bringing in all these computers and we're tearing them apart. And these kids, there's like 46 of these students in this program. They're tearing them apart, they're putting aluminum here, copper here, processors here, the chassis here. And we've generated over $5,000 in doing that. And the kids, they learn how a computer works, like tearing the whole thing out. You have a question?
What, do you sell this stuff then?
Yeah, we sell it.
Wow.
It's worth money. So
that's great.
Yeah, so that's just an idea. It's just, you got limited money, well then how can we go outside the box? You know, and he keeps me at bay. He says, no, that may not be a good idea. So we just say, that's fine, let's look at something else. So we've got a big resource over there at that high school, so that's what we want to tap into.
Thank you for mentioning that about the, you know, work the videos and the stuff the kids do with the scan TV and all that as far as the bond measure goes, because there are a lot of positive things happening in our schools that people may not know about, and that's would be a good way to get some of the stuff out there.
It'd be nice to put like this is just an example, but it's over 2 minutes, sorry. But put a screen, a nice size screen right there in Roth's where everybody eats. Just have it right there, and it's just on channel 15 on CN. Let's just go. Work something out with, maybe Oracle, something where we could put these around throughout the community and the hospital. I don't know, it's just ideas.
Yeah.
So,
I think that has some tremendous potential, just the concept of the resources there, I appreciate you mentioning that too. And I would really like to know in more detail at some point, what are both the needs and the possibilities for technology in the district? Because I feel like it's not my area of expertise at all, but I'd love to know what the district can do with some bond money and how that can impact the education of our kids. Where,
Any other technology questions?
Are all the schools have the same amount of technology outlined in schools, or are there some that have less?
Well, it's a school's decision on what they're going to spend money on. And some schools are on a good path of rotating to 20%, maybe 10 to 20% each year. And others haven't been able to do things like that. So it really varies from school to school.
in the past, we've seen it has a lot to do with the priorities of the school. When things come up, they have to spend, like this year, I think the high school cut quite a big chunk of their technology. Not because they wanted to, but because of what they had to. So they've got a lot of computers in that school, and then all the warranties just went out this summer. So that means in 2 years, those computers, all 300 or 4, whatever there is, they're going to start dying. So that's something to think about as principals, and they've been really good. All the principals have been setting aside so much money for maintenance every summer, so much money for, swapping out the computers. But it has been getting more challenging with the budgets getting leaner. So.
Do all of our schools have enough internet access?
Yes.
For some of these? I'd like to see more about what kind of dreams you might have for 5 years out, like what I was referring to. What would you like to do if we had some more money?
The blank check.
Exactly. Good luck selling that. But yeah, it would be nice to see.
Or maybe Andy would like to put something together.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you mentioned like wireless capabilities and things like that, things along those lines.
What would get us to full use of this equipment you're getting, and what kind of infrastructure can we put in these buildings to make it worthwhile, and make your job easier maybe too?
Yeah, Andy has already been proactive in this area and giving some idea of funds and what would be involved in infrastructure, and we've given that to you.
Okay.
So we have that already.
Just a comment. I've gone on Silverton High School's, the school district's website, and then into the high school's website. Or, I don't know how I guess it's all part of the same deal, but looking for some specific information, such as a time an event is going to occur, a date it's going to occur, where it's going to occur, the basic stuff, contact information. A lot of times very difficult to find. I was in the parking lot wanting to see Wizard of Oz, I think last year, with about 20 other cars, and looking on the website, and all it said was something such as, there was all kinds of information, but it didn't have, there was nowhere to be found the playing time. Apparently there had been a change, and I didn't get it along with other people, but it seems like to me, and just in using that, I don't know who's responsible for that, but just a comment, it seems like it's really difficult to find the basic information that I would go to websites like that for most of the time.
The way the money is set, there's not really a Latin master. It's Silver Falls School District, so it's kind of
Do a lot of people manage different parts of their own
Well,
town?
Mark Hannon is using a gentleman working at the high school is kind of overseeing that, but that's not really his job description. So Mark has been very creative in helping him and working with him. We have students that kind of help that going. I kind of help it going. But there is no money for someone to sit there and keep that organized like it really has potential. So we're doing the best we can, but I'm sure Mark hearing that will appreciate and he'll bring it back to Derek McElfresh, which oversees that. And
I think it'd be along those same lines if you go look at some other schools on there.
Oh,
The information is quite obsolete.
Yeah, no, I have.
Yeah.
Actually, Owen, that's a really good point. It's a frustration that I share too, and what Gary said is accurate. We don't have a web manager, and so it's assigned to Derek McElfresh, who that's really not what we hired him to do, but it's just kind of evolved into one of the things that he does. And so one of the things that Gary and I talked about is a long-term plan, like you were talking about, Tom, is a district web manager that would manage all the school websites, because it's really kind of a mishmash right now of who works on those.
I don't know if that's even a full-time, I doubt it's a full-time job at all, but maybe it could be outsourced.
All staff has access to that page, so if you're the theatrical production, you can take 5 minutes and change that page. At our school anyway, we have real quick access. I mean, otherwise, you could have a web page manager, but what's that web page manager going to have to do? Chase down everyone to find out what time this is changing to that time, where you have months.
Well,
Google Apps and all that, it's really quite easy, and I'm not that accessible, but you just give that access to them and they can change it up. Right, Gary?
That's right.
Are you going to fire me off of that?
Well, there may be an opportunity there too for kids to be involved in that as well.
Yeah.
From the education level.
I just wanted to say I've been really impressed with the Scan TV. I've had some personal experience with my daughter doing it as well, and it's just what a great program you have going on. And the kids are so responsible about it, and they take pride and ownership in it, and it's just really impressive. I never knew it existed, that it was really neat to see.
Kids do a good job. Technology questions? Okay. Thank you, Gary.
So for title programs, without restating what I typically say each time I'm in front of you, because the law hasn't changed that drastically, although we did mention that because of the waiver that ODE received, that Mark Twain and Robert Frost are no longer under sanctions. We have 6 title-funded schools. All 6 of them are now school-wide Title I programs. So they all went through a year-long comprehensive planning process, and they're all at that level. They all are at above the district average of 45.06% poverty. That's the average for our entire district. And that's a 3% increase from the year before. Allocations are again based on percentage of students who qualify for free and reduced meals in all of our schools. And we rank order each school, and the highest poverty school right now, based on information from last year. And why do we use last year's? Because principals need to know their allocation for staffing for this year. And that's the same system we've used for probably about 7 or 8 years. Scotts Mills, 73.42, and our funded but lowest funded school is 48.69 with Eugene Field, so everybody else is in between there. But Scotts Mills is significantly higher than Butte Creek at 58.61, which is in the number 2 spot. Any questions about title programs? Okay, Central Howell, we had a really good start to the year, except for our enrollment. And as you know, enrollment in kindergarten is very high. We have excellent teachers and staff that work very hard to meet the needs of those all those enrollees, but some of our classes are very crowded. Mr. Slovic in the 6-7 has 33, Mrs. King has 32. We haven't taken any transfers at the 6th through 8th grade in probably a year and a half. And even those kids that transferred in, they've since moved. So we just had a lot of move-ins into our attendance area at the middle school level. But in contrast, we have 13 students at the 4th grade.
That's pretty amazing. That hasn't happened in years.
Yeah. I don't know why. I'm guessing that property owners, they're not selling their homes, they're just renting them. Because I don't know where else people would live, because these families have lived in the farm homes for years, so how else would they be available? The kindergarten, there's 35 kindergartners, but we have a kid that goes to kindergarten in the morning and then stays for the rest of the day. And so that kid is officially a kindergartner also when you're counting bodies. So we have 24 in the morning, 12 in the afternoon. Well, why do you have such lopsided class sizes? Because we have the Pratham assistant that comes in the morning with the Pratham kids. That's why. So you've got 2 adults with 24 kids. You've got 1 adult with 12 kids in the afternoon. And a little breakdown on where those kiddos come from. 6 are from Pratham. 16 are from Central Howell. That's a really big class size for the Central Howell kindergarten. 4 are from other Silver Falls school districts, 1 Jervis, 3 Eugene Field. And 10 are from Salem Kaiser, and 6 of those 10 have older siblings already in our school. And so that contributed to making up the 36. And our parents were great about the AM/PM issue. I think that Mrs. Ross may have passed out at the end of the year, but I think she would have, if we wouldn't have come through, I think she would have worked very, very hard to make that work no matter what. But I definitely see a difference in her energy level now that she has 12 fewer kindergartners to teach each day. And in contrast to the higher poverty schools, Central Howell is 29.91 free and reduced meals, and that's up a little bit from last year at 28.76. And we have few migrant students. Our ELL students are served each day, and they go down to Pratham on a bus at 2 o'clock, and then they're brought back at the end of the day. And the reason for that is because Pratham actually has more ELL students now than Central Howell. And we have a few special education students with several referrals in the works. We have 7 total classroom teachers. We have our 2 half-time kinders. We have a solid first, a solid second, a 3-4, a 4-5, a 6-7, and a 7-8. We have a .45 music teacher. Volleyball is off to a 2-2 start so far. We had 16 students, we have boys and girls, turned out. And they took 2nd place in the middle school volleyball tournament this last weekend. So they're very happy about that. We're having Battle of the Book teams with Mrs. Ross now that she has the energy. She's going to head part of that up, and Mrs. Roska, educational assistant. And we made almost $9,000 at Oktoberfest, selling Twinkies and Oreos, the healthy kind. And the general fund at Central Howell gave our teachers $300 this year for classroom supplies and materials, and our parent club is very generous. They gave them another $10 per student to use for things for their classroom. Parent club has also started a concession stands. They're really hot on the trail of getting glass backboards for our gym, and so through concessions and the money that they already have raised, and I think we're probably going to end up with glass backboards pretty soon at Central Howell, which will be very nice. They're also going to fund a large portion of automating our library, like Victor Point has recently done. It's a long process, but we have already have a dedicated laptop. They're going to purchase the software, and then becomes the task of entering all those books into the library software. But we don't have a humongous collection, so it may not take as long as at other schools. We will be going to Silvercrest this Wednesday for Mr. Record and Silvercrest Christmas tree run, and that'll be a lot of fun. We make regular use of our One Call Now still every Monday. It's kind of routine. Teachers are participating in their district PLC meetings. Most appear to be working on writing efforts with their district PLCs. That's a goal for us, is writing to have a 10% increase in the percent of students meeting or exceeding standards as compared to last February and May scores. And we're continuing to implement high-leverage instructional strategies, so they're through their professional goal and the expectations that go along with that. We have regular intervention at the end of the day in reading and math for students who need that, the neediest of the needy. And we also started a new special education study hall. Only students who are in special education can go to this. It's at the very end of the day, and it helps them not only with some homework issues, but oftentimes some of those kids need help with organization and gathering up materials to take home at the end of the day, things like that, rather than just being excited to be able to go home and leaving it all at school. And Central Howell is again doing accelerated reader. Other schools that do AR are Eugene Field, Silvercrest, and Mark Twain. And our students have read 399 books so far at this point this year. So, any questions about Central Howell?
Digitizing the library, is that just the card catalog, or what do you actually do when you do that?
So we get the software, and then somebody or a large group of people over time will just enter in the card catalog-like information into the database. Essentially, it's just a database. And then once we get all that, or as we get that and we get enough of it in the system, we'll get the wand and the barcode labels and the whole, the whole shooting match there. Yeah.
How many Salem Kaiser kids you got there?
Well, last spring we looked at our list, and it was I was really surprised. It was only about 30% of our students came from Salem Kaiser. I don't know the count this year.
Do they come and stay? Do most of them stay all the way through?
Yes. And I think that a lot of them just don't want their students going to large elementary and large middle schools.
Maybe this question's for Mark, but do you see them? Do they follow through to high school?
Well,
Good. Other questions? Thank you, Justin. Good report. Marilyn, Scotts Mills and homeless program.
I brought Katie Boss with me tonight. She's one of our new teachers. And let's just say she hasn't learned how to say no to me yet. I'm going to talk about Scotts Mills first, and then at the end of that portion, Katie will talk about what she does at our school, and then I'll talk about the Title X program. So I know there have been lots of questions about the change in enrollment in our building. Heard some of them tonight. There was some expressed last month, and so the bullet under A, that information involved about the changes since last fall. So numbers in parentheses are those students who were enrolled in our school for 2 years or more and have moved. So we graduated 18 students. 7 of those joined us in 7th or 8th grade. We enrolled 12 kinders this fall. 10 students transferred or were being homeschooled. 9 of those joined us in the last year or 2. 3 of them went to online charter school. 3 transferred out of district to Mount Angel. 1 transferred in district, and 3 are being homeschooled. 3 students were placed in specialized programs in the district. 4 students moved to new homes that are in district. 22 students moved to new homes that are out of the district. And our current enrollment is 130. Of those, 50 kids joined us in the last 2 years.
It's a lot of movement.
Yes, we have a lot of mobility in our school. And then if you look at B, those are the in-district track transfers. That's been a challenge for us as well, the discrepancy between the ratio of those who transfer out and those who transfer in. Of the ones there that you see who transferred out, they all transferred either as kinders or when their families moved into our district. They might have been enrolled in kindergarten, but they've never been enrolled in our school. And then underneath of there are the transfers in, those 6. All but one of them started with us in kindergarten, and then when their families moved outside of Scotts Mills, they requested transfers back so that they could keep their kids with us. One student joined us in 2nd grade because her family moved into Silverton at that time, and she had family ties to our school, so she requested a transfer to Scotts Mills. Some challenges in the recent past. Before I talk about this, I want to say that things are going great at Scotts Mills right now. I don't want you to hear me say they're not, because they are. We're having a really good year. We're off to a great start. Staff, I think, is feeling rejuvenated. We felt a little shell-shocked after the last 2 years. They've been really rough on us. But I think people are rejuvenated, excited to get moving forward. We've come up with a lot of great ideas that we're implementing for how to deal with the challenges that we're faced with. So we'll talk about some of those challenges, but then we're going to get to some specifics about the good stuff, because there is lots of good stuff going on. So enrollment and high mobility is an issue. You can see there from our annual ABM. I didn't use October 1st numbers because they've changed so much. The enrollment throughout the year changes so much for us because of mobility. So I asked Sandy Sprower to run ABM, which is an average of all the kids that enroll all year long, and based on how long they each spend with us, what's the average number of kids we have every day throughout the year. And so that's what you can see, the range from 103 5 years ago to 156 last year. And then this year, we're at 130 right now. The large class sizes, when you look at this graph, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of difference there. However, the change is that in 8, 9, and 9, 10, those classes were pretty much evenly distributed, K-8. Everybody had about the same number of kids in a class. But for the last 2 years, the high concentration has been in grades 3 through 8. So until this year, our grades 3 through 8 have been up around 29 to 31 kids in each grade in both years. This year, our 6, 7, and our 7, 8 have 27 kids each, and our 3, 4, and our 4, 5 have 20 and 21. So it's a much better way for kids to get a lot of focus on academics instead of a lot of focus on behavior. As you can see with the next bullet, we had a lot of behavior changes, especially in 10, 11, when we had an influx, that big influx of students coming in. And I think that the behavior changes are the thing that surprised us the most, because we put a lot of programs in place to address getting to know the kids and having the kids get to know us and having them feel comfortable in our building. But what we hadn't comprehended, because we've never experienced a change where 30% of your population is brand new to your building. What we didn't realize was that whenever new kids move into your building, they always test limits, but the other kids that are already there will just push back and say, we don't do that here. And there's just a subtle peer pressure. I think that's everywhere. There's subtle peer pressure for new kids to conform. We had so many new kids, there weren't enough existing kids to exert the kind of pressure that was necessary for them to conform. And so we had a lot of acting out. And not only a lot of acting out from the students who were new to us, but the students that were already in our school who were, let's just say, frequent flyers. There weren't very many of them, but we were able to keep them in check. But when there were lots of other students, maybe their behavior also escalated. And so that's why you see that really huge jump there in 10, 11. By last year, we were down. Last year was really, even though there were 154 kids for ADM compared to 156 last year compared to 108 and 910, the number of incidents were relatively the same. So that is actually a much better rate of behavior moving into years ago. There's been a considerable shift in demographics, if you look, for the last 4 years. We actually, from 07 to 09, our poverty rate actually went down. I think it was another school district that went down during the recession. And then we had the boundary change, and you see how it went way up. That's basically due to new students in our school. That's going down again. I don't know what it is right now, but I know it's not at 73% right now. But there are lots of issues that students who come from economically disadvantaged homes have that other kids don't have. And so it's tough to meet their needs, especially when we have very large class sizes. So we're really excited that we have smaller class sizes this year, and we can do a better job of addressing those needs. And you'll also see that we had a high percentage of students who were Title X eligible, which is the homeless program, and a large concentration of students who moved into our district or into our building in the last 2 years were students who were moving back into homes with their grandparents. So they weren't kids who had been living in our attendance area, but came from various places. And it wasn't just in the historical Scottsville's attendance area, but in our new area as well as in Monitor, the kids were assigned kids from Monitor. Just a large number of families that were moving back in with relatives and blah, 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 and chose to come to our school. And we're seeing a lot of those families now getting back on their feet, getting their own homes and moving out, which is a lot of what we saw in that first bullet, the kids moving out. And it's good that those families are being stable and being, getting back into their own places. We have the new rating system in Oregon for our report card, and we were rated level 3 as well as 1 to 5. It was a bit of a blow to us because for a number of years we were one of the highest achieving Title I schools in the state. In fact, ODE was using this as a model for some schools that were similar size to us when they were planning school-wide Title I programs. They would tell us them to come visit us and see what we were doing. And to go from being one of the highest Title I schools in the state to being the lowest in our district is a bit of a blow. So we're working at that. We had good growth from our kids, our students, and we need to really work on our subgroup growth. We have a lot of subgroups, and we need to really work to get them to achieve at a higher level. You have to turn a couple of pages to see the idea. This is math only. I didn't put a video on here. I was trying to get a different graph just to see if it would be easier to read. I'm not sure that it is easier to read, but the circles on this graph are benchmark levels. So you'll see not in bold, but 212-3, that means third grade. Our benchmark is 212. Fourth grade, the benchmark is 219. Are you seeing that? Okay, so those are the benchmark lines. If you look at the legend on the bottom left, the open triangle is third grade achievement. So if you look at your 8th graders and you go back and you find, well, they don't have an open triangle because I couldn't find data that would have been in 06, 07. I got these numbers, average root scores off of the sideline site, and they didn't have an 06, 07. So the first third grade would be for our last year's 7th graders, our current 8th graders. And so these are different groups of kids when they were in third grade. Does that make any sense? And then when they were in fourth grade, you have to look at the legend to see how they were doing. Else you'll notice sometimes they made good growth, sometimes they went backwards. Last year's 8th graders achieved 235 as average. As 7th graders, they achieved 234 as 8th graders, their average root score. The benchmark for 8th grade was 234, so they were at benchmark, but that was a little bit of a backwards regression. But then
Does the mix of kids within that grade change though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it did.
It's not the same exact kids.
No. No, it's all of our kids in 8th grade. So, any questions on that? So here we get to some of the stuff we're doing now at professional development. This is partially funded by Title I. We are setting reading, writing, and math goals for 2012-13. It's not finalized yet, but it's based on our data from last year. Data from last year is this year's current kids, so we're taking out kids that are no longer with us and looking just at the kids currently with us. Our teachers have chosen to do a book study collaboration. They'll get together. Our teachers have a common lunchtime, so they'll either do it at their lunchtime or they will do it before or after school. They actually like the idea of doing it at lunchtime better. We have several part-time teachers, and they're not all here after school or before school. We probably will be focusing on writing, but we're also looking at a math book on developing deeper understanding in math. Our teachers have all agreed to do some video recording and self-reflecting on their instructional practices with the use of iPads. We'll be buying 4 iPads with our Title I money, specifically for professional development. The value of an iPad and videotaping is that you can do it by yourself. You don't have to have somebody else come in. Teachers are a bit reluctant to tape themselves, and often it's because it requires somebody else to come in and do the taping. And with an iPad, you can prop it up somewhere. And it's got a good camera in it, a good video camera in it. It has a really good microphone, and it will pick up sound throughout the whole room. And then it's very easy for a teacher to look back at it on the same device, as well as to go back and do some video editing if you want to just get a clip to save and get rid of the rest of it. So an iPad is a really great tool for professional development. And I must say, this is the 6th year I've been at schools, and until this year, I had only gotten one teacher to agree to videotape herself. And so this year, we've gotten them all to agree to it with the use of the iPad. And I promised to look only at the pieces that they're wanting to look at. So I think we'll get some really good stuff for them. They'll be setting goals for themselves, and then the purpose of their video reflection will be to practice what their goal is and then reflect on how they're doing and set some more, try out some new strategies to achieve their goals. All of our probationary teachers have agreed to pilot the new teacher evaluation standards that include a student achievement portion. So I'm meeting with them on Thursday to figure out exactly what that looks like. I won't use the student achievement portion in their actual evaluation this year. I'll use the professional practice and professional responsibilities portion, what they do to try to achieve good student achievement in their evaluation, but how the students actually achieve, I won't be piloting that in their grade until they give me things, but I'm very excited that they're going to try that. We are doing some curriculum development, and I just have to say this for Dustin, we're not using our Title I money for this. In teams, our grade level teams, so our K2, Sarah Hunt, who's our kindergarten teacher, Lisa Garrett, who teaches first grade in the morning, Leah Lott, who teaches first grade, or second grade in the morning, and then Lisa teaches first and second grade combined in the afternoon, while Leah is our BLL teacher in the afternoon. Then our grade 3-5 team, Michelle, who is the 3-4 teacher, and Danielle, who's the 4-5 teacher. And then our 6-8 team, which is Stephanie, the 6-7 teacher, and Helen, the 7-8 teacher. And now, I'll introduce Katie to you because she is our new halftime math specialist. She's funded 0.3 by general funds to teach 4th, 5th grade, and 8th grade math, and 0.2 by Title I to do some math interventions. And we brought her on so that we could get straight grade math. We now actually have straight grade math in all of our grades, in all of our classrooms except kindergarten, I believe. And Katie, there are some materials at the back that Katie put in the packet for you, starting with the mathematics and mathematical practice.
I'll talk about those when I'm done a little bit. So, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about how I spend my 4 hours a day. I'm at Scotts Mills every morning from 8 to noon. And one of my hours is spent teaching 8th grade math to 16 8th graders. And then an hour is spent teaching just 5th grade math to a small group of 12 5th graders. And then we have an hour of student contact time where I'm available to do assessments and provide intervention for small groups in math. And then there's about 30 minutes to prep for the 5th and 8th grade, about 30 minutes to look at data and coordinate with teachers. And then I think Marilyn mentioned this briefly, but on PLC days, the district PLC days, I have 45 minutes with the other specialists to meet with all of the grade level teams to talk about data and intervention and coordinate services for students. So it's been interesting having this position because I realized about a week in that I was sort of charting new territory. There wasn't anyone to tell me what to do exactly. I mean, I had goals, but it was a new thing. And so I started looking at the data that was available, the OAKS scores that we had, and tried to think about what to do with that hour of time that I had available for student contact and how I was going to use that K-8 most effectively. So I decided at the beginning of the year to administer 2 different assessments to students to help get an idea of who is going to need the most support. And both of them ended up being online assessments. Easy CBM, which is a free online benchmark and progress monitoring tool from U of L. I had teachers help me, and I helped administer that test to all of the students in the school, and it gave us a real quick and easy way to see who was struggling the most with the concepts. It's a test that focuses on conceptual understanding as opposed to procedural fluency. So it's looking at, do you understand these concepts of geometry that you're supposed to learn in 2nd grade, as opposed to, did you get this right, this wrong? So I gave that, and then gave this interview with some middle school students called the Math Reasoning Inventory. And I had an assistant help me administer that to all of our 6th graders. And it was sort of a test because I found it and I thought it was really neat, but I didn't know how long it was going to take and I didn't know anybody who had done it before. So we sat down with each of the 6th graders for about 15 minutes and interviewed them about, we asked them a series of math questions and had them explain their thinking. And it gave us some really good ideas about where our students were struggling and some good information about where to go for instruction, what we needed to be teaching. The 6th graders struggled quite a bit last year on their focus assessment in math. So we wanted more information about how they were thinking about it and what we could do to support them. So, that data also gave me an idea of maybe, well, it helped me see some themes school-wide about where we could focus math for all grades. And right now, where I'm at, I'm still kind of in the middle of thinking about this, is I've been looking at the standards for mathematical practice from the Common Core State Standards. So there's 2 parts to the Common Core State Standards. There's the content, which is the specific things that kids need to know at each grade level. And then there's the standards for practice, which is sort of the ways students should be able to use that information. And I feel like the standards for mathematical practice are things that we can focus on school-wide at Scotts Mills because they apply to everyone. And so what you have in your packet is a copy of those standards, and highlighted are some things that I thought were interesting. Unfortunately, they're not more precise than that. It's mostly things I thought were interesting. And in the margin, I kind of summarized in student language, which I sometimes do with my students, sort of the ideas that they need to be demonstrating. So, for example, when we talk about making sense of problems and persevering in solving them, for students that looks like don't give up when you come to a difficult problem. Keep trying. Reason abstractly and quantitatively. Be creative. There's more than one way to solve a problem. So I included that just to give an idea of what it is that I've been thinking about at Scotts Mills and where we're going in trying to improve our instruction and see increased growth in math. And then there's also a picture from the National Research Council Strands of Mathematical Proficiency. And it gives a sort of a visual of the same ideas that are in the standards for mathematical practice. And something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is how important it is that we do a lot of different things in math so that knowledge is useful to students. And I like that picture, so I thought you might like it too. So that's what I plan to say.
Any questions for Katie?
I like how you sum things up, the highlights, because you got a big paragraph of technical words, and it's just like it's just saying don't give up.
Look here, this is good.
Yeah, I like that.
And what you put in your writing, what it means to students, that's makes sense too.
How's the staff like it having someone to specialize in the math, Maryland, up there without, do they like saying, okay, I don't got to worry about math?
Well, I don't think it's that they're thinking they don't have to worry about
Well,
math.
no, but I mean-
But they're not in it alone. They're
Right.
not in it alone.
That's
And for one thing, our 3, 4, and 4, 5 teachers have been meeting with Katie about trying to figure out what materials we need to be more successful, because we don't really have a curriculum. We have a curriculum, but we don't really have resources to teach that curriculum. And so,
Is it helping them to step their game up a bit?
it is. And so we've ordered the number corners things from the Bridges for Mathematics, thinking that would be the best use of getting the resources that we need for the amount of money it would cost. That would be our best way to spend money. And I have a little bit of money to slide over into things like curriculum, because we cut a position in our building. We had an assistant who took a leave of absence, and rather than replace that position, I cut it. And so we could use some of those funds to help do things like buy math materials that we sorely need, buy some science materials we sorely need.
I think the staff appreciates having someone else to talk to about math and to just have a little more time to think about some things when they have so many subjects that they need to prepare for multiple grades.
And especially having just one subject, one grade to teach math.
Right.
So in middle school, Ms. Love's teaching 6th grade math, Ms. Gibbons is teaching 7th grade math, and Katie's teaching 8th grade math. And in intermediate, Ms. Stadley is teaching 3rd grade math, and Mrs. Anderson is doing 4th grade math, and Katie's doing 5th grade math. And then because we have a straight 1 and a straight 2 in the morning, and we have a straight kindergarten, those teachers are each teaching straight grade math. When we put 1, 2 together in the afternoon, we're doing things other than math and reading.
Good job. Thanks.
Any other questions specific about Scotts Mills? Okay, on the back of the second page of my packet is where the Title X report starts. And the first step is just numbers you can look at your leisure. You can see that in the first graph, our Title X count has been going up consistently. But overall, compared to the 3,700 students that are in the district, it isn't a large percentage. Each one of those kids is important, and we need to make sure we're there to support them. But in terms of a large percentage, it isn't a large percentage, district-wide, district average rather. And then the other one is just a grade level count. When I turn in, this is actually straight from the Title I count that's turned into the Department of Ed every June. We turn this in. They ask for it by grade level. And occasionally I've been asked by one of you if there's a difference in grade level, so I put that in the packet for you to look at. It really varies from year to year. Typically, our 12th grade has the highest number, and that's been pretty true all the way across. But we have some grades in the lower elementaries that are almost as high as 12th grade. If you turn over that just shows the primary nighttime residents. Each of those 4 categories is how we determine whether or not students are eligible for the program if they're living in one of those situations. Any questions about any of that? Okay.
This is district-wide?
Yeah, this is district-wide.
It's increasing. I think we've asked before, is that just better an increase or better identifying them?
Well, I think
Or some
early, like from between 07, 08, and 08, 09, where it more than doubled, I think that was partially the beginning of the recession there, but also in large part that we got better at identifying. But I think in the last few years, the increase has been the recession. I think our building people are getting pretty good at identifying what is not eligible. The count to date this year, you can see, is much lower, but it's a cumulative count all year long, so it starts out like that every year. And it goes up as the year increases, as the year goes by. It gets higher because every student, whether they stay in our building or move, in our district or move, are counted on our count. So one of the things that we changed this year in the registration packet, I want to give credit to Linda Brown because she put a lot of effort into getting our registration packet uniform district-wide. We added some questions on one of the forms that was in the packet just to try to flag students who might be eligible. Just because families check one of these things doesn't necessarily mean they are eligible, but what it says to our building people is if these are checked, then talk to those.
And say some things that didn't seem to really align with what I've heard the governor say, which was refreshing to me. Some notes I took was that he's expecting we should train teachers in how to reach students that learn differently, build a repertoire and practices that meet the individual needs. Gain efficiencies. More money is not coming, so we need to learn how to work in this environment and be effective teachers and be effective in the classroom. Energize and impact learning of children at their individual levels. And he's real clear about focusing on reading, science, mathematics, and technology.
And one other thing that I kind of appreciated is he said the standards and the expectations of what we expect kids to achieve, basically some of the Common Core standards, some of those things aren't going to change, but how we get there is, I got the impression that it was somewhat flexible up to districts in certain situations. So that was a little hopeful that we could maybe work with things a little bit to reach those standards. Anything else? Thanks, Walter. Correspondence? Didn't say anything.
TV.
Second audience of business. Would anybody else like to address the board tonight? Okay. We have an action item on our agenda, approve Hill International of Portland as the district facility upgrade construction program manager. I know Andy and that committee worked on this for quite a while to find this firm to work on this with us if we choose to confirm bonds.
Yeah, if I can just briefly comment on that. I know a couple of representatives are in the audience tonight from Hill International, and they made the grade. They were in multiple applications for this contract, and after the paper scoring occurred and personal interviews occurred, they rose to the surface. So I think if the board, well, first of all, there's some preliminary work that Hill International is prepared to do right away. In fact, I'll be setting an appointment up with them probably this week or early next week, including some of the things that were discussed tonight, specific to technology and conceptual designs. What does that look like? Owen, what you commented on, energy efficiencies, a number of things that needs to occur specifically, as well as identification of an architect, because that will be very helpful information as you move ahead with this. Even though I agree, Tim, that your decision, or at least agreement to move forward with a bond, does need to occur by November. That would be my recommendation. Your formal action wouldn't necessarily occur until after the new year. But you've, with Hill International on board, you've got the resources or access to the resource that you need to do exactly what you've discussed tonight, getting conceptual designs, beginning to get the big ideas out there, and beginning to form a real defined method for informing the public and educating the public on many of the elements that you just heard tonight within the survey summary. So I think it's good timing, and I'm going on here a little bit, but it's a strong recommendation that we use Hill International as program manager.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
I move for approval.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you, you guys. And I'd like to talk about one other action item. Are we ready to vote on the intent to withdraw from the ESD recommendation tonight, or do people want to think about that until the work session?
Yeah, I think we should go ahead. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we provide a notice of intent to withdraw from the Willamette ESD.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and we'll adjourn to executive session under ORS 192660 in 5 minutes or so. Thank you for coming, everyone.